There comes a moment in the life of a deeply emotional person when something changes forever. Not because they stopped caring, not because they became cold, but because they finally understood a painful truth. Not everyone deserves an explanation. For years, they explained everything. They explained why they were hurt. They explained why certain words affected them. They explained why silence felt heavy. They explained their intentions, their emotions, their loyalty, their pain, again and again and again. They believed if they could just find the right words, people would finally understand them. But emotional intelligence teaches something difficult. People do not misunderstand you because your explanation is weak. Sometimes they misunderstand you because it benefits them to do so. And that realization changes everything. The empath begins life believing connection solves conflict. They think honesty repairs distance. They think if they remain patient enough, loving enough, understanding enough, every relationship can heal. But over time, emotionally intelligent people notice patterns. They notice how some individuals only listen to respond, not to understand. They notice how some people demand explanations while never offering accountability. They notice how toxic individuals turn clarity into ammunition. And slowly, the empath becomes tired. Not weak, not bitter. Just tired. Tired of defending kindness to cruel people. Tired of proving innocence to those committed to suspicion. Tired of explaining boundaries to people who benefited from crossing them. That is the day silence begins to feel powerful, because silence is not always surrender. Sometimes silence is self-respect. The emotionally intelligent person eventually learns that constant explaining comes from a hidden fear, the fear of being misunderstood, rejected, or abandoned. So they over-explain, they overgive, they over-clarify, not because they are guilty, but because they desperately want peace. And manipulative people sense this immediately. There are people in this world who feel everything deeply. They notice changes in tone, silence in conversations, hidden emotions behind smiles, and pain inside words others ignore. These individuals often spend much of their lives trying to create peace around them. They believe communication can solve almost anything. So whenever conflict appears, their first instinct is to explain themselves. They explain why they reacted emotionally. They explain why certain behavior hurt them. They explain their intentions repeatedly, hoping clarity will remove tension. At first, this seems like emotional maturity. Wanting understanding is natural. Wanting harmony is human. But over time, many deeply emotional people develop a dangerous habit without realizing it, over-explaining themselves to people who never intended to understand them in the first place. This habit usually comes from fear, the fear of rejection, the fear of losing connection, the fear of being seen as difficult, dramatic, or too sensitive, so they work overtime emotionally. They try to choose perfect words. They replay conversations in their minds for hours. They send long messages trying to clear misunderstandings. They apologize even when they are not wrong, just to restore peace. What they fail to notice is that emotionally unhealthy people often take advantage of this behavior. Some individuals do not ask questions because they care. They ask questions to gain control. They demand explanations not because they are confused, but because they enjoy watching someone emotionally struggle to defend themselves. The empath keeps talking, hoping understanding will come. But the other person may already have decided not to understand. That is the painful realization emotionally intelligent people eventually face. Not every conflict is caused by poor communication. Sometimes the problem is a lack of empathy from the other side. This changes the empath deeply. For years, they believed more explanation would create more peace. But eventually, they notice something heartbreaking. The more they explain themselves to certain people, the less respected they feel. Why? Because constant explaining can unintentionally communicate insecurity. It can send the message that your boundaries need approval from others before they become valid. Emotionally mature people eventually understand something powerful. Healthy individuals do not require endless emotional presentations before respecting your feelings. A simple "that hurt me" should be enough. A simple "I need space" should be enough. A simple "I disagree" should be enough. When someone truly respects you, they listen with sincerity. They do not force you into emotional courtrooms where you must constantly prove your emotions are legitimate. This is why growth changes the empath's behavior. They stop feeling responsible for everyone's opinion. They stop chasing validation from emotionally unavailable people. They stop exhausting themselves trying to make toxic people finally understand their heart. Instead, they begin valuing emotional conservation. They realize peace is precious, energy is precious, mental stability is precious, and not every person deserves unlimited access to those things. The empath does not suddenly become cold or uncaring. In fact, they still feel deeply. The difference is that they become more selective about where their emotional energy goes. They begin understanding that kindness without boundaries leads to emotional exhaustion. So instead of explaining every choice, they become calmer. Instead of defending every boundary, they enforce it quietly. Instead of begging to be understood, they accept that some people are committed to misunderstanding others. That acceptance brings emotional freedom. For the first time, the empath realizes they do not need to convince everyone of their goodness. Their truth does not disappear simply because someone refuses to acknowledge it. And in that moment, over-explaining loses its power because emotionally intelligent people eventually learn this lesson. Those who truly care will seek understanding naturally. Those who do not care will never be satisfied no matter how much you explain. One of the hardest lessons emotionally intelligent people learn is that not everyone deserves access to their energy. In the beginning, kind-hearted individuals often believe they must always be available, always understanding, always patient, and always willing to help others emotionally. They carry conversations longer than necessary, forgive repeatedly, and invest themselves deeply into people who give very little in return. At first, this behavior feels noble. It feels compassionate. They tell themselves that being a good person means always showing up for others, even when exhausted. But over time, something begins to happen. Their emotional energy slowly disappears. They feel mentally drained after certain conversations. They feel anxious before interacting with specific people. They notice that some relationships leave them emotionally empty rather than emotionally supported. This is when awareness begins. Emotionally intelligent people start recognizing that energy is one of the most valuable things a person possesses. Time can sometimes be recovered, money can sometimes be earned again, but emotional energy, once repeatedly drained, affects every part of life. It affects mental peace, confidence, sleep, relationships, focus, and even physical health. The problem is that many emotionally sensitive people give their energy too freely. They respond to every accusation. They defend themselves in every argument. They try to rescue every broken relationship. They attempt to fix people who refuse to fix themselves. And toxic individuals often benefit from this pattern. Some people enjoy emotional control. They create confusion, tension, or guilt because it gives them power over others. They know kind-hearted people will keep trying harder. They know empathetic individuals struggle to walk away from conflict. So they continue taking emotional energy without giving respect, honesty, or accountability in return. At some point, emotionally intelligent people begin noticing a painful truth. Not everyone values your emotional effort. Some people only appreciate your kindness when it benefits them. Some people only contact you when they need emotional support. Some people expect unlimited patience while offering none themselves. This realization changes everything. The emotionally intelligent person begins understanding the importance of emotional boundaries. They realize that protecting their peace is not selfish, it is necessary for survival. They stop believing they must attend every emotional battle they are invited into. They stop wasting hours trying to explain themselves to people who have already chosen misunderstanding. Instead, they become more intentional. They choose conversations carefully. They choose relationships carefully. They choose where their attention goes carefully. This does not mean they stop caring about others. It means they finally begin caring about themselves too. One of the strongest signs of emotional maturity is recognizing when a relationship consistently drains more energy than it gives. Healthy relationships may have conflict, but they also contain respect, support, accountability, and emotional safety. Unhealthy relationships leave people feeling constantly anxious, guilty, confused, or emotionally exhausted. Emotionally intelligent individuals learn to pay attention to how people affect their inner peace. Do certain people only bring chaos? Do certain conversations always become emotionally heavy? Do some individuals repeatedly ignore boundaries while demanding emotional access? These questions become important because emotionally mature people understand something powerful. Access to your energy should be earned, not automatically given. As growth continues, the empath slowly stops chasing approval. They stop trying to prove their worth to emotionally unavailable people. They stop feeling responsible for fixing every broken situation. And most importantly, they stop abandoning themselves in order to keep others comfortable. This transformation often surprises people around them. Those who once benefited from unlimited emotional access may accuse them of changing. They may call them distant, cold, selfish, or detached. But the truth is far different. The empath is not becoming cruel. They are becoming emotionally disciplined. They are finally learning that peace requires boundaries. They are finally learning that constant emotional sacrifice is unsustainable. They are finally learning that their kindness should not come at the cost of their mental well-being. And perhaps the most freeing realization of all is this: you do not owe unlimited emotional energy to people who repeatedly disrespect your heart. Most people misunderstand silence. They see silence as weakness, avoidance, or defeat. They assume the quiet person has nothing to say, nothing to defend, or no strength left to fight back. But emotionally intelligent people eventually discover something powerful. Silence can become one of the greatest forms of emotional strength. There is a difference between silence born from fear and silence born from wisdom. Fearful silence happens when someone is afraid to speak. Wise silence happens when someone realizes not every situation deserves their energy. Emotionally sensitive people often spend years reacting to everything. Every criticism feels personal. Every misunderstanding feels urgent. Every conflict feels like something that must immediately be fixed. So they respond quickly. They explain themselves repeatedly. They defend their intentions. They try to clear every false assumption. But over time, this emotional habit becomes exhausting. The empath begins noticing that some arguments never truly end. Some people are not looking for resolution. They are looking for reaction. They want emotional chaos because chaos gives them control. The more emotional the empath becomes, the more power the manipulative person feels. That is when emotional intelligence changes the game. The empath slowly realizes that remaining calm is more powerful than winning every argument. They begin understanding that emotional reactions can sometimes give toxic people exactly what they want: access to your peace. So something shifts internally. Instead of reacting instantly, they pause. Instead of defending themselves endlessly, they observe. Instead of raising their voice, they protect their calmness. And this silence confuses people. Why? Because emotionally reactive individuals are predictable. They can be manipulated through guilt, pressure, anger, or emotional triggers. But emotionally grounded individuals are much harder to control. When someone no longer reacts the way others expect, their silence suddenly carries power. This does not mean emotionally intelligent people stop feeling emotions. In fact, they often feel things very deeply. The difference is that they learn emotional discipline. They stop allowing every feeling to control their behavior. They understand that maturity is not about suppressing emotions. It is about managing them wisely. Silent strength appears in many forms. It is walking away from disrespect without creating a dramatic scene. It is refusing to argue with someone determined to misunderstand you. It is staying calm while others attempt to provoke anger. It is protecting your peace instead of feeding emotional chaos. Many people think strength means dominating conversations or always having the final word. But emotionally intelligent people discover something different. The strongest person in the room is often the one most in control of their emotions. This realization changes relationships completely. The empath no longer feels the need to prove themselves constantly. They stop interrupting their peace to correct every rumor, accusation, or misunderstanding. They understand that people committed to misunderstanding, you will often ignore explanations anyway. So silence becomes selective wisdom. Not every comment deserves a response. Not every insult deserves attention. Not every conflict deserves participation. This mindset creates emotional freedom. Instead of carrying stress from endless arguments, emotionally intelligent people preserve their mental energy. They become more focused, more peaceful, and more emotionally stable because they stop giving every situation access to their emotions. And surprisingly, silence often reveals truth faster than words. When emotionally intelligent people stop chasing, they see who truly values them. When they stop over-explaining, they notice who genuinely tries to understand. When they stop reacting emotionally, they expose who depended on controlling their emotions. Silence also creates self-respect. It teaches the empath that their value does not decrease because someone misunderstands them. Their truth does not require constant defense to remain valid. This is why silent power feels so transformative. It is not coldness. It is not emotional emptiness. It is emotional mastery. The empath becomes calmer, wiser, and more intentional. They realize peace is more valuable than temporary victories in pointless arguments. They no longer need to shout to feel powerful because real strength is not always loud. Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is remain calm, protect their peace, and walk away without needing the final word. For many emotionally sensitive people, setting boundaries feels uncomfortable at first. They worry about disappointing others. They fear being seen as selfish, rude, distant, or uncaring. So instead of protecting themselves, they tolerate behavior that slowly damages their peace. They say yes when they want to say no. They allow repeated disrespect because they want to avoid conflict. They give endless chances because they believe kindness means endless tolerance. But emotional intelligence eventually teaches a painful truth. Without boundaries, kindness becomes self-destruction. Many empathetic people confuse boundaries with cruelty. They believe that if they truly care about someone, they must always remain available emotionally. They think love means sacrifice without limits. They think patience means accepting behavior that hurts them repeatedly. Over time, however, this emotional pattern creates exhaustion. The empath begins feeling emotionally drained, mentally overwhelmed, and deeply unappreciated. They start noticing that some people only respect them when they are useful. Some individuals expect constant emotional support while giving almost nothing in return. Others repeatedly cross lines because they know the empath struggles to enforce consequences. This is where growth begins. Emotionally intelligent people slowly realize that boundaries are not punishments. Boundaries are instructions for how others are allowed to treat you. They are not walls built to keep love away. They are protections built to keep peace alive. Healthy boundaries sound simple, but they require courage. I cannot continue this conversation if you keep disrespecting me. I need time for myself. That behavior is not acceptable. I will not explain my decision repeatedly. These statements may seem small, but for emotionally sensitive individuals, they can feel terrifying at first. Why? Because setting boundaries often reveals uncomfortable truths about relationships. Some people respect your boundaries immediately because they genuinely care about your well-being. Others become angry because your boundaries remove their control over you. This is why boundaries are powerful. They expose intentions. People who benefited from unlimited access to your emotions may suddenly accuse you of changing. They may call you cold, selfish, dramatic, or distant. But emotionally intelligent people eventually stop measuring themselves by the reactions of those who dislike accountability. They understand something important. A person who becomes upset when you create healthy boundaries often benefited from your lack of them. This realization changes the empath deeply. Instead of constantly prioritizing everyone else's comfort, they begin considering their own emotional needs too. They stop abandoning themselves to maintain temporary harmony. They realize peace built on self-sacrifice is not real peace at all. Boundaries also create emotional clarity. Without them, relationships become confusing and emotionally draining. The empath keeps giving more, hoping things will improve, while the other person continues taking without reflection or responsibility. But boundaries change the dynamic. They teach people how to treat you. They protect emotional energy. They prevent resentment from building silently over time. Most importantly, boundaries restore self-respect. Emotionally intelligent people eventually understand that protecting their mental and emotional health is not selfish. It is necessary. They stop feeling guilty for needing space, rest, honesty, or respect. They stop apologizing for having emotional limits. And something surprising happens when they finally enforce boundaries consistently. Their confidence grows. Why? Because every healthy boundary sends a message to the mind: my feelings matter too. This is where true emotional maturity begins, not in pleasing everyone, not in endless emotional sacrifice, but in creating balance between compassion for others and respect for yourself. The empath does not stop loving people. They simply stop loving others at the expense of their own peace. They become wiser about access, wiser about trust, wiser about emotional investment. And perhaps the most important lesson of all is this: you can be kind without allowing disrespect. You can be compassionate without abandoning yourself. You can love deeply while still protecting your peace. That is not selfishness, that is wisdom. As emotionally intelligent people grow, one of the biggest changes in their life is the way they observe others. In the past, they may have relied heavily on words. They believed promises, emotional speeches, apologies, and reassurances because they naturally wanted to see the good in people. If someone said they cared, the empath believed them. If someone promised to change, the empath gave another chance. If someone explained their behavior emotionally, the empath tried to understand. But experience slowly teaches a different lesson. Words can comfort, but patterns reveal truth. This realization changes how emotionally mature people view relationships. Instead of focusing only on what people say, they begin paying close attention to what people consistently do. Because emotionally intelligent individuals eventually understand that actions rarely lie for long. Someone may say they respect you, but constantly ignore your boundaries. Someone may claim they love you, but repeatedly create emotional pain. Someone may promise loyalty, but disappear whenever things become difficult. And over time, the empath learns that consistency matters more than intensity. This is an important transformation because emotionally sensitive people often get trapped in emotional cycles created by powerful words. Manipulative individuals know how to say the right things at the right time. They apologize beautifully. They make emotional promises. They create temporary moments of closeness after causing pain. But emotionally intelligent people begin noticing the cycle itself. They notice repeated behavior, repeated excuses, repeated disappointment, and eventually they stop asking, What did they say? Instead, they ask, what pattern are they showing me? This shift creates emotional clarity. Observation becomes more powerful than explanation because it removes illusion. The empath no longer wastes endless energy trying to analyze hidden meanings behind words. They simply observe behavior over time. Does this person respect my boundaries consistently? Do their actions match their promises? Do I feel emotionally safe around them? Do they only care when it benefits them? These questions become more important than emotional speeches. Observation also protects emotionally intelligent people from manipulation. In the past, they may have ignored red flags because they wanted to believe the best about someone. They may have excused harmful behavior repeatedly because they focused on potential instead of reality. But maturity teaches something powerful. Potential is not the same as behavior. Someone may have the potential to become better, kinder, or more emotionally available. But emotionally intelligent people stop building relationships based only on hope. They begin accepting people for who they consistently show themselves to be. This acceptance is difficult at first because it sometimes means letting go of emotional fantasies. It means admitting that some people enjoy attention but not commitment. Some people enjoy emotional support but avoid accountability. Some people love access to your kindness while offering little stability in return. Observation removes emotional blindness. Instead of becoming emotionally consumed by every explanation, the empath learns patience. They stop rushing to conclusions and start watching quietly. And silence often reveals more than confrontation ever could. When you observe calmly, people eventually reveal their true priorities, their true character, their true intentions, not through one mistake, but through repeated patterns. Emotionally intelligent people also realize that healthy relationships do not require constant confusion. Genuine care creates consistency. Respect creates emotional safety. Honesty creates stability. You do not need to constantly decode someone's behavior when their actions clearly align with their words. This understanding brings peace. The empath stops chasing clarity from emotionally inconsistent people. They stop trying to force honesty out of those committed to confusion. Instead, they trust observation more than emotional performance. And this changes their life completely. Because once you learn to observe patterns instead of becoming hypnotized by temporary words, you protect yourself from emotional exhaustion. You stop falling for empty promises. You stop ignoring your intuition. Most importantly, you begin making decisions based on reality instead of emotional hope. That is where emotional wisdom truly begins. One of the greatest transformations emotionally intelligent people experience is learning that true confidence does not come from external approval. In the beginning, many deeply emotional individuals depend heavily on how others see them. If people misunderstand them, they feel anxious. If someone criticizes them unfairly, they feel the need to defend themselves immediately. If they are rejected, ignored, or judged, they begin questioning their own worth. This happens because sensitive people naturally value connection. They care deeply about relationships and harmony, so disapproval can feel emotionally painful. They spend years trying to be understood by everyone around them. They explain their intentions repeatedly, hoping others will finally recognize their sincerity. But over time, emotionally intelligent people discover something life-changing. Peace cannot exist if your self-worth depends on everyone else's opinion. This realization often comes after disappointment. The empath eventually notices that no matter how kind, honest, or careful they are, some people will still misunderstand them. Some individuals will project insecurities onto them. Others will judge them through jealousy, anger, bitterness, or emotional immaturity. At first, this hurts deeply. The empath may wonder, why do people see me this way? Why do I keep trying so hard to be understood? Why does misunderstanding affect me so much? And slowly, the answer becomes clear. They have been seeking emotional validation from people who are emotionally incapable of giving it. That awareness creates the beginning of inner peace. Emotionally intelligent people start understanding that confidence is not controlling how everyone perceives you. Real confidence is remaining grounded even when misunderstanding happens. It is knowing who you are without needing constant reassurance from the outside world. This changes everything internally. Instead of obsessing over every negative opinion, the empath becomes more centered. They stop chasing approval from emotionally unavailable people. They stop explaining themselves endlessly to those committed to misunderstanding them. They realize that trying to control everyone's perception is emotionally exhausting and ultimately impossible. For the first time, they begin turning inward instead of outward. They ask themselves, am I acting with integrity? Am I respecting my values? Am I protecting my peace? Am I being honest with myself? And these questions become far more important than public validation. This is where emotional freedom begins. The empath no longer feels destroyed by criticism because they understand criticism does not always reflect truth. Sometimes criticism reflects another person's unresolved emotions, insecurity, or limited perspective. They also stop taking rejection personally in every situation. Emotional maturity teaches us that not every rejection is proof of unworthiness. Sometimes people reject what they cannot understand. Sometimes people disconnect because of their own emotional limitations, not because you lack value. This understanding creates calmness. Instead of constantly fighting for acceptance, emotionally intelligent people begin accepting themselves more fully. They stop shrinking their personality to fit into spaces where they are not respected. They stop sacrificing authenticity just to avoid judgment. And something powerful happens when self-respect grows. Inner peace becomes stronger than external noise. The empath no longer needs to win every argument. They no longer need to convince everyone of their goodness. They no longer need to defend every decision. Why? Because emotionally grounded people understand that peace is more valuable than constant validation. This does not mean they become arrogant or emotionally detached. It means they become emotionally secure. Their confidence no longer depends entirely on applause, approval, or acceptance from others. They still care about people. They still value relationships. But they stop abandoning themselves emotionally just to be liked. And perhaps the greatest sign of emotional intelligence is this: being misunderstood no longer destroys your sense of self. You know your heart. You know your intentions. You know your values. And that inner clarity creates a quiet kind of confidence that no external opinion can easily shake. That is true emotional strength, not loudness, not superiority, but peace within yourself, even when the world around you misunderstands you.